Alright, what's going on, guys? We are only a few weeks removed from the release of Armored Core 6, and in the time since fans have gotten a hold of this game, really broken down all the technicalities, there has been a lot of discussion around balancing and what major changes to the overall sandbox of this game would end up looking like. And today we have our first peer into the minds of FromSoftware with the first of many patches for Armored Core 6. Patch 1.02 was rolled out this morning, and it brings with it some sweeping changes to a lot of underused weapons, addresses quite a bit of bugs, and then makes one change that, although we don't fully understand it yet, may be quite controversial, and we're gonna break all of that down right now. But before we get into that, if you want to stay up to date on all things Armored Core, Elden Ring, and FromSoftware, and enjoy lore and general discussion, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into it. To break this down, I'm going to walk you through all of the patch notes and show you things that they don't describe, and then I want to have a brief discussion about what this means for the future regarding future DLCs and how Armored Core is going to look going forward. So let's start at the top. A new patch has been distributed to improve gameplay stability and make balance adjustments. Please apply the latest patch before playing the game. Please note that this patch is focused on balance adjustments that will allow players more build diversity in the early and mid game when assembling their AC, as well as bug fixes. PvP oriented balance adjustments will be released at a future date. And so we begin with weapon tuning. First off, we have the Rensetsu RF, increased attack power and rate of fire, and decreased the reload time. And you can see the attack power per shot went from 194 to 224, the fire rate went from 1.3 to 1.5, and the reload time 2 down to 1.8. Next up, we have the LR36 Curtis, increased attack power and decreased reload time. We can see the attack power went from 135 up to 142, and the reload time from 2.4 down to 2.2. Next is the RF24 Turner, increased attack power and projectile speed, and decreased reload time. The exact numbers are as follows. The attack power went from 87 to 105, and the reload time went from 2.8 down to 2.2. And of course, factor in the projectile velocity. The RF25 Scudder is up next, increased attack power and projectile speed, and decreased reload time. The exact values are above from 110 to 135 in the attack power, and the reload time decreased from 3.2 down to 2.4, and then the projectile speed increased. For the MAJ201 Rensetsu AR, we see increased attack power and projectile speed, and decreased reload time. This is up from 62 damage per shot to 77, and of course it's a 3-round burst, so factor that in per bullet, and the reload time was decreased from 2.4 down to 1.9. The MG14 Ludlow is next. We see increased attack power and total rounds, and increased projectile speed, decreased recoil, and reload time. So a pretty substantial buff there. The attack power goes from 36 to 42, the overall ammo sees a big jump from 540 up to 720, recoil decreases by 1 value from 5 to 4, and the reload time drops by 25% from 2 to 1.5. Next up, one of my personal favorites, the DF-MG02 Chongqing. It got increased attack power, total rounds, and projectile speed, and decreased reload time. The attack power jumped from 32 to 39, got a big ammo buff from 720 up to 990, and the reload time fell from 2.8 down to 2.2. And the final weapon on the list is the MAE210 Etsujin. It received increased attack power, total rounds, and projectile speed, as well as decreased reload time. And the exact values are as follows. The attack power went from 40 to 46, and that is per round as it is a 4-round burst. The ammo economy jumped from 480 to 600, and the reload time decreased from 2 to 1.5. And a big shout out to Umbra Bliss over on the Reddit for providing these graphics. So overall, we're seeing buffs across the board for a lot of these lighter ballistic weapons, which overall I think is a fantastic change, since one of my biggest concerns about the game is that a lot of these weapons couldn't hang, and there really wasn't any reasonable way to justify their usage over some of the outliers. Now, of course, we didn't see any nerfs in this patch. I was wholeheartedly expecting a Zimmerman nerf, as well as the miniguns, but I'm always happy to see some of the lesser used weapons get a buff before we start significantly nerfing anything. Now here's where the controversy begins. Adjusted certain attacks performed by the enemy units, Balteus, Sea Spider, and Ibis Cell 240, and they do not provide any specifics on what that means or what changes were made. Now here's the thing, given that these three are regarded as the hardest bosses in the game, I cannot imagine FromSoftware making them any harder, and seeing as so many people online are complaining about these bosses being too hard, this was probably a nerf to some of their more potent attacks. Now I did go and fight Balteus after this update this morning, and my overall impression, though I may be wrong, is that he felt a lot less aggressive. Although keep in mind, we don't have the data, and this was only one run. Now, part of the reason why I think this was probably a nerf is because they did the same thing to Radon and Margit back when Elden Ring released. And I can see the point that a lot of people expressed, where Balteus did seem like too much of a difficulty jump right at the beginning. But when it comes to Sea Spider and Ibis, personally I thought they were perfectly fine for their respective points in the game. These bosses are supposed to be checkpoints for you to figure out the systems and learn what the game requires of you in changing your build to fit the situation. And while when I first ran into them they genuinely felt impossible, I was able to swallow my pride and figure out their weaknesses. And once you do figure out those weaknesses, you realize that these bosses really weren't that hard all along. So personally, I'm not a fan of boss nerfs, but again, we don't have the exact data just yet. Either way though, I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on that. Now let's break down the bug fix section. Fix the bug that prevented certain weapons from dealing damage to the boss of the mission destroy the weaponized mining ship. Fix the bug that caused the boss of the mission prevent corporate salvage of new tech to be unable to detect the player. Fix the bug that caused certain enemies to not be displayed correctly during the mission survey the uninhabited floating city. And that's one that's happened to me quite a bit. Fixed a bug that caused vertical missiles and certain coral weapons to deal unintended amounts of damage. Now I really wish we had the specifics on this one particularly, because I have no idea which weapons exactly this affects. We don't know if it's just one coral weapon or all vertical missile launchers or vice versa, but this does read like a nerf to those kind of weapons, so hopefully that information comes out soon. Improved camera controls when spectating online arena battles. Fixed a bug that caused the punch animation to not be displayed correctly on the opponent's screen during online arena battles, and then some other unspecified bug fixes. Fixed a bug that caused the game to enter offline mode and unable to save progress after the device recovers from sleep mode, and that's for Xbox and Steam. And then the next two for Steam. Fixed the text displayed on screen after selecting quit game from the system menu on the title screen, and fixed a bug causing certain bosses to be rendered incorrectly. They then attached a message at the bottom of the patch notes saying, "We will continue to provide improvement updates in the future to allow players to further enjoy Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Please stay tuned for more news by following our social channels." And this is kind of surprising to me. I was not expecting this game to get a lot of patches. It's starting to sound like this game is going to have long time support, which makes me think we're probably going to get DLC down the line, or a follow-up game, which I'll talk about more in a second, because we did cover recently the quote from Bandai Namco EU CEO, where he talks about wanting to continue the Armored Core IP with FromSoftware, which pretty much all but confirms that we're going to be getting more Armored Core. Now it could be DLC, but one thing that the Armored Core games in particular do is have a follow-up game per generation, such as 4 and 4 Answer and 5 and Verdict Day, and they've done it in the past where you can actually port over your AC data from one game and use it in the follow-up game. And so for them to be doing balancing changes for Armored Core 6 could potentially be setting up for a future title as well. And considering that FromSoftware was recently hiring for mech artists, I definitely think that's a possibility. Anyways though guys, that is patch 1.02, the first official update we've gotten for Armored Core 6, and apparently the first of many. I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts down in the comment section below. How do you feel about this update? Are you satisfied with what we got? Is there anything that stuck out to you that you didn't like or are particularly happy to see? Personally, I really like the weapon tuning, but I'm gonna have to see those particulars on the boss changes before I make up my mind. Either way though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. And with all that, I will catch you in the next one.